Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teaching with Magic, a podcast exploring the intersection of education, fantasy, and literacy. Here at Teaching with Magic, we explore the different ways that teachers in the fiction and in the real world make magic for their students. You'll hear discussions about teachers and teaching methods in fantasy, science fiction, and pop culture. You'll hear interviews with scholars in various fields about important topics in education, and you'll get to be a part of an ongoing conversation about why the imagination matters. Welcome to Teaching with Magic. Hello, listeners. Thank you so much for your support for the last several episodes. I really appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your feedback. And I'm so happy that you've come to join us again and have started working with me in this little community. Today, I am going to bring you our first audio teacher feature. But first, what is a teacher feature? Teacher features are little profiles that I write on my blog. I started this a few years ago when I wrote a paper for a Potter Saga class at Signum University. I explored how different teachers in the Harry Potter books used active learning methods. This was a fun way to look at different teaching methods, and it was an interesting way to take a look at how fantasy authors use teaching and reflect on teaching within their works. These are authors. These are stories. So sometimes the perspective is going to be a little bit skewed. However, I still think there are valuable lessons to be learned by looking at teachers within the fantasy genre, particularly because they reflect different teaching styles and different methods that may have been familiar to the authors when they were children or have been familiar to the authors in their own lives in some way. In the case of Harry Potter, we're taking a look at the story through the eyes of a teenage boy. So in that case, this perspective is going to be a little bit different. However, today, I'm taking a look at a teacher. Well, I'm not really sure you can call him a teacher because he never really puts that hat on, as it were. He does have reflections of the Campbellian mentor figure. And many times the mentor figure has a teaching role to the hero in some way, whether it's religious education, whether it's swinging and slashing swords, whatever it might be. Somehow, the mentor figure is, mentoring. Today, I'm going to start at the beginning with a wizard named Gandalf. Some of what I talk about today will be reflective of a post I wrote on Gandalf, and I'm going to read directly from that post. That's where I'm going to start, but I'm going to add some more thoughts as well. I also took the opportunity to ask my followers on TikTok what their favorite Gandalf moments were, whether that was the Gandalf of the books, of the Peter Jackson films. What was their vision of Gandalf, and what did they appreciate most about Gandalf? But for now, I'll begin by reading my original thoughts on Gandalf when I wrote this post back in 2020. Whenever I've taught a Tolkien-related course to children, Gandalf immediately becomes a hot topic of discussion. Students range from questions about his origins to observations of his abilities, and whether or not he uses these abilities enough. Back in 2020, I had a student who was consistently vexed because they felt that Gandalf just wasn't doing enough to stop the Nazgul and squash them once and for all. They were practically in conniptions when he rode out to meet them with a beam of light on the Pelennor Fields in The Return of the King. Why hasn't Gandalf done that before? Has he been holding back this whole time? What's the point of his powers anyway? What does he even do? This led to a slightly heated discussion about Gandalf's abilities, his connection with the Elven ring Narya, and what this ring allows him to do, and his original directive from the Valar. One student responded with the following. Gandalf's job isn't to save the world. His job is to guide the men and the hobbits to do it. Your teacher isn't going to tell you the answer on a test, but they are going to show you how. That's what Gandalf is doing. Oh, from the mouths of babes. This statement, I think, is the best summary of Gandalf's role in Tolkien's stories, and a perfect explanation of what kind of teacher he is. Many teachers in current fantasy literature operate from the literal classroom and show the hero the way that magic, the sword, or their powers work. Gandalf, however, is not there to teach Frodo or Aragorn how to use magic or combat skills. He is there to put out the fires when an emergency occurs, but ultimately it is the residents of Middle-earth, such as Frodo, Aragorn, Éowyn, Theoden, and Faramir, to name but a few. They need to be the ones to defeat Sauron. For they are the ones who need to live in Middle-earth peaceably and ultimately thrive in the Fourth Age. Gandalf operates similarly to a teacher who engages in classroom experiential learning. I described the concept in more detail in my presentation at the Chestnut Hill Harry Potter conference. This was back in 2019. But in essence, the teacher acts as a facilitator while students try out the concept on their own. The teacher can provide guidance, pose questions, and offer hints. But ultimately, the students work through the problem at hand with the information they are given and a little creativity, and then they devise a solution. This, I think, is what frustrates my students when they encounter Gandalf. Many modern fantasy texts provide magic as the solution to problems, or at least a magical problem that needs a magical solution. In Harry Potter, there is always a perfect spell, curse, or potion that causes some kind of reaction and oftentimes provides the happy ever after solution. Further, every curse or spell has some kind of counter curse, and Harry only needs to figure out what that counter is. In Marvel and DC publications, the superhero wins the day because they apply the right amount of power in just the right sequence and outsmarts, or physically beats to a pulp, the villain. Yes, I realize this is a very reductive analysis. Counterpoints can easily be made, but it's a structure that seems to be on the surface of my students' minds. But what my students don't realize at first is that Tolkien doesn't write stories about magic. Magic is just a vehicle, a pathway for events to occur. Tolkien writes about people, about heroes who must use their own strengths to save Middle-earth, not just from Sauron or from Morgoth, but from their own hubris and failings. Gandalf's Good Morning is a fantastic microcosm of this concept. Bilbo Baggins has his own preconceived ideas of what good morning means and assumes that Gandalf also operates from this schema. Shire hobbits, as you may know, operate in a very closed, close-knit society, and anything outside of their norms is considered queer. Bilbo can't conceive of Gandalf understanding good morning as anything other than a customary greeting. Gandalf challenges this notion by posing his famous retort. What do you mean? Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good on this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on? This flummoxes poor Bilbo, which, of course, sets him up for his entire unexpected journey. Gandalf poses questions and places Bilbo and the dwarves in difficult situations, then leaves them to devise their own solutions. Bilbo ultimately must use his wits, with the help of a certain quote-unquote magic ring, to outsmart and outriddle Smaug. And Thorin must overcome his pride and greed in order to be the true king under the mountain, if only for a short while. The same notions occur in The Lord of the Rings, though the danger is far more complex this time. As an Istari and an emissary from the Valar, Gandalf's task is to, and I quote, advise and persuade men and elves to good, and to seek to unite in love and understanding all those whom Sauron, should he come again, would endeavor to dominate and corrupt. This is from the third part of the Unfinished Tales concerning the Third Age. Gandalf is only able to accomplish this because of his choice to act as a wanderer, not because of his magic or ownership of Narnia. Gandalf travels over the vast lands of the Wild, Eriador, and other kingdoms of Middle-earth, making connections with all of its citizens. Men, elves, dwarves, and even the seemingly inconsequential ordinary hobbits. Saruman and Radagast ultimately fail in their assignments because they close themselves to the outer world and focus on their own lore. And where have the two blues gotten to? Only Tolkien knows. Gandalf's true power, therefore, is in the human connection, if you'll pardon the expression. Gandalf brings Middle-earth together, whether it is through the stories told at the Council of Elrond, the Fellowship, or the company of 13 dwarves and 1 burr hobbit. Gandalf consistently reminds us of our own humanity and what it means to be human. And he also reminds us that we're all a part of the music, and that we all have our parts to play, and that Iluvatar has a plan for us all. And in some cases, we'll be able to play out that plan exactly as we choose. But still, we are a part of the music and a part of that plan. And he reminds us that every life is precious, no matter how pitiful it may seem. In Book 1, Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Past, poor Frodo's life is overturned in the space of one afternoon. Everything he thinks he knows about his Uncle Bilbo, his adventures, and his magic ring has all at once been completely overturned, thanks to a conversation with an old wizard. Understandably, Frodo is frustrated. He is upset, he is frustrated, and he starts to take out this frustration on someone he doesn't even know. Someone he's never met and who's been characterized as a villain in all of the stories that he's heard. Poor Gollum. "But this is terrible," cried Frodo. "Far worse than the worst that I imagined from your hints and warnings. O Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance." Pity. It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the rings so, with pity. Here, Gandalf reminds us that Bilbo's turn with the ring could have gone very differently. Bilbo began his relationship with the ring with pity. Pity and mercy. If he had struck Gollum down in anger, as he had originally intended to, as Gollum originally did, his heart could have been ensnared forever. He could have retreated into the Shadow World in a similar way to Gollum. But still, Frodo is angry. "I do not feel any pity for Gollum," he says. "Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death." "Deserves it," says Gandalf. "I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. For even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least." And here Gandalf reminds us once again just what a part we have to play in the music. Gandalf reminds us that it is not up to us to deal out judgment, especially of others. We don't always know what happens in the lives of our fellow men. And what's more, even if we did, it doesn't matter. Even the very wise cannot see all ends. Gandalf reminds us that we must treat our fellow man with pity. We must treat our fellow man with mercy. Many of us are eager to deal out judgment. We hear one side of the story and we're ready to cast judgment on somebody. We're ready to say what they deserve. But none of us know. None of us know a full story. And even then, pity and mercy, those are the virtues that we must hold. Let's dive into another specific example within The Lord of the Rings. That is Gandalf's relationship with Pippin. Gandalf's interactions with Pippin are often quoted as comedic interactions, but when you take a closer look at their relationship, you can see that theirs is one of friendship, with the intimacy belonging to a teacher and their student. Poor Pippin is often scolded throughout the book for getting in the way, or asked to leave when the adventure gets too difficult. But Gandalf, despite his grumpy demeanor, understands Pippin's importance in the adventure of the ring. While he does not know exactly what part Pippin will play in the adventure, he is one of the first to speak up for Pippin when Elrond wants to send him back to the Shire to warn everyone about the dangers that are coming for them. Elrond believes that Pippin does not fully understand the dangers that lie before him. Nor does Frodo, says Gandalf, unexpectedly supporting Pippin. Nor do any of us see clearly. It is true that if these hobbits understood the danger, they would not dare to go. But they would still wish to go, or wish they dared, and be shamed and unhappy. I think Elrond, in this matter, it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom. This excerpt is from The Ring Goes South. This may seem like a dig at Pippin's intelligence at first, but Gandalf's insight is spot on. He understands that there are far greater powers in the world than that of elf magic or the wisdom of lore masters. Pippin's loyalty to his friends is his strongest quality, and he knows that he has a lot to learn before the journey is over. Later, in the Two Towers, poor Pippin's curiosity gets the better of him, and he is whisked away with Gandalf on Shadowfax. Now, for the life of me, I cannot imagine that riding horseback is conducive to a history lesson. But nonetheless, Pippin is finally able to have a conversation with Gandalf. Here, Tolkien employs the classic use of epistemic regime. We, the reader, receive new information through the eyes of the least experienced character in that particular scene or situation. Pippin's conversation with Gandalf gives us the opportunity to learn about the Palantiri, their history, and their use throughout the history of Numenor and Middle-earth. Pippin, of course, is delighted and astonished at getting answers to so many questions, and is eager to soak in all of this new information. Gandalf, I think, is just as eager to share all of this information, if for no other reason than to work through his thoughts and decide what must be done next. But this is also an opportunity for both Gandalf and Pippin to confront the mistakes that they had made with the Palantir that night, and to remember that sometimes, as Gandalf says, a burned hand teaches best. Though they both regret Pippin's pain at having handled the Palantir, it was a reminder to Gandalf of the dangers of peering into a Palantir without the proper training. Even though he is tempted for a while to peer into it, Pippin's folly reminded him of what could have happened if he had succumbed to the same temptation. At this moment, Gandalf and Pippin's relationship finally becomes reciprocal. Pippin has been a source of mild annoyance for Gandalf up to this point, although there have been some moments where Pippin impresses Gandalf with his quick thinking and his friendship with the Ents. However, this is one of the first interactions where Gandalf sees Pippin as close to a peer as he can. Though Pippin's foolishness has cost them a significant amount of time and secrecy, it has spurred them both on to Minas Tirith and to the fulfillment of both of their destinies. Pippin comes into his princehood in Minas Tirith, and he is able to serve and protect Faramir from Denethor's madness. Gandalf is able to continue his mission of advising and persuading men and elves to do good, even if events do not occur in the way that Gandalf may have originally wanted or predicted. The ultimate lesson that Gandalf teaches us is to rely upon one another, to rely upon fellowship above power, strength, or greed. He encourages Frodo to take companions with him, but only if they can be trusted. Frodo cannot complete his journey or his task alone. My students will tell me time and time again that Frodo was only able to get through Mordor to Mount Doom because, quote, Sam did all the work. Their words, not mine. Frodo wasn't even able to complete his quest. Ultimately, Gollum was the one who, though accidentally, cast the ring into Mount Doom. But only because Frodo listened to Gandalf's advice and musings about trust, pity, and trusting his heart to show him the way forward. Gollum may not have been a trustworthy friend, but he was still granted fellowship for a short while, and that enabled him to be exactly where he needed to be at the right time. Finally, I would like to close with a quote from one of the final chapters of The Lord of the Rings. I am coming with you at present, but soon I shall not be. I am not coming to the Shire. You must settle its affairs yourselves. That is what you have been trained for. Do you not yet understand? My time is over. It is no longer my task to set things to rights, nor to help folk to do so. And as for you, my dear friends, you will need no help. You are grown up now. Grown indeed very high, among the great you are. And I have no longer any fear at all for any of you. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I would like to extend a big thank you to my followers on TikTok who contributed their favorite Gandalf moments, including A Concerned Hobbit, Casey, Mythgond, and Alma Reacts. Thank you all so much for your participation, your cooperation, and your fellowship. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your other favorite podcast feeds. If you enjoyed listening, please leave a rating and a review as well. You can read and find out more about Teaching with Magic by visiting our website, teachingwithmagic.blog. You can leave a message on our podcast page, read past Teaching with Magic posts, and check out our book lists on our affiliate page. We also invite you to support us on Patreon. You'll have access to bonus material, our Discord channel, live Q&As, and you'll get a sneak peek at future products such as lesson plans, worksheets, and other teaching tools. The link is always available in our show notes and the podcast page on our website. Thanks again for joining us, and as always, keep making magic.